All right, everyone, today I'm outside the studio. I'm in Tofino. The surf report looked like this. So we drove down to check that out. It's going off in Cox Bay, but I'm not stopping. I'm giving you guys the 3 things that every buyer is looking for when they purchase a company. So let's drop into it. All right, I'm Scott Duke. This channel is all about empowering entrepreneurs to sell their companies on their own and giving them the tools and the resources to do that. So if that sounds something that could be useful to you, then don't forget, like and subscribe. All right, today in our episode, we're gonna do a quick recap of where we're at, talking about the 3 musts for every buyer. So let's do our recap. First, number 1, they care about their time. That is their future energy, the potential energy they have in the future. They care the most about that. Next, they care about their money. So again, this is their past energy that they've stored up over time and they're going to deploy into new avenues to make more money, right? Then they care about their status. So in today's episode, we are learning all about buyers' money, right? Buyers want more money, and how do they screen for that in businesses? And once you know that, you'll be able to ensure that your business sells. So money is going to break down into 2 categories, all right? It breaks down into return, which we all know about. So it's like, okay, I want to invest into some kind of vehicle to increase my money over time. I want to look for a 3% return, a 5% return, a 10, a 20, a 30, right? And in our first video, we talked about small businesses. They're looking for that 25 to 45% return, which sounds insane, but small businesses are super high risk, so that's what buyers are looking for. But how does this return actually factor into the whole money side of things? Well, let's dig into that a little bit, and then we'll talk a little bit more about risk and how that factors into the money as well. So first, we're going to talk about return, okay? So all you need to do to sell your company is you need to know what the hurdle rate, that is what return your potential buyer is looking for, and then you need to set your price so they can get that return. This is actually not all that difficult, and this part of a business sale can be pretty simple when you look at it from high level. The first time you talk to a buyer, you ask them, what kind of return are you looking for? They tell you, our hurdle rate is 20%. Our hurdle rate is 35%. So now you know what they're looking for on a return perspective. So that's going to tell you exactly what you can price your business at for that particular buyer, for them to be satisfied and for the deal to complete. So let's look at an example here. Okay, I said this, the average rate's 25 to 45%. So let's say our buyer's wanting a 35% return, right? And your company earns $250,000 a year. This isn't the revenue that it's generating at the top line, okay? This is the return that it's making on an annual basis. So this is your income that the company is generating, or we'll talk about other videos, your EBITDA or your SDE we talked about in the first series about business valuation. But generally, let's just call it earnings, okay? So your company is earning $250,000 a year. Now, this buyer is coming with all cash. They're using 0 debt. So how much can we charge for this business? Let's get our little pointer here. Okay, so $250,000, that's the earnings. They're looking for a 35% return, 0.35. We divide by that. Simply put, this is what that particular buyer looking for a 35% return on your business is going to be able to pay. That's what they're going to be able to pay and still get their 35% return, meet their hurdle rate. All right, so let's change this up a little bit. So what if our buyer wants a 25% return, right? Company's still earning the same. They're paying just all cash, no debt. So we do the same division, $1 million, right? All right, so this should hopefully click something in your brain. If we can find buyers that have lower hurdle rates, that's going to push the value of our company up. But one more example here, because this is going to be pretty impactful. So let's go back to our 35% return, okay? So our buyer wants a 35% return, and then your company's still earning the same thing, the $250,000 a year, but this buyer is going to pay 25% of the purchase price with their own cash, and they're going to pay 75% with debt, right? They're going to borrow the rest of the money to fund the purchase of your company. So what does this look like? So let's say that $1 million from our last example, they fund $1 million with debt, right? And it's 6% to service their debt, which is about $60,000 a year they're going to be paying to service this $1 million. All right, so we take that $60,000 and we subtract it from our $250 because we have, if that's our earnings the company is generating per year, we're gonna have to use some of those earnings to service the debt. So if we do that, we're left with $190,000. So now we have our 35% return here, okay? We're gonna divide that, and we can still, out of the money that's left, we can still have value. Our buyer can still get a 35% return on this amount of money if they pay $542,000. All right, so now we have $1 million that they paid, and we have this $542,000 that they can get a return on at this, with this $190,000 that's remaining after servicing the debt. Which if you, this should say 542. Anyway, this was if it was at 25%. But anyway, so if you added this, let's just change that right now. It's gonna make it easier on our brains. 542. All right, so now we have our $1 million that came from debt. We've got the 542 that the buyer is willing to pay and still get their 35% return, which brings the price of our business up to 1.5. So a staggering difference, right? And this is why the vast majority of company value comes from the cost of capital, because everybody is going to use some kind of debt to purchase your business, and they're going to put a certain amount of money down themselves. So I hope this one kind of nails home that the structure of your sale, when you're structuring how the money is used around your business transaction, that is going to make a big impact on how much you get at the end of the day in company value. So let's just scoot back quickly. So this is the big thing for return, right? Know your buyer's hurdle rate. If you know what they're looking for from a return perspective, then you'll have a better idea of what they'll pay for your business. And then you set your price so the return is greater than their hurdle rate. So if you set the price, and you're like, I want the price to be higher. Well, now you're gonna have to figure out a way to creatively use debt service to push that value of your company up and get the buyer to pay a little bit more while they're still seeing the return that they're trying to achieve. All right, so that's part one of money, all right? Return. Now, the second part, which is equally as important, is risk. So when people are looking at the return they're gonna generate, they're also looking at the risk. And that risk return has to balance itself out, right? If it's super high risk, then we're gonna want a really high return, which is going to drop the value of our company, right? Now, if it's super low risk, we're gonna be looking for a little bit of a lower return, which is gonna increase the value of our company. So for risk, it's like your risk has to be less than risk of other investments with a comparable return. So let's look at an example company here. So from our risk perspective, this is in this revenue column, this is talking a little bit about, what's the stability of the revenues in this business. And we're going to look at company A and company B. So the revenue model for company A is recurring revenue. So every single month they get the same amount of revenue that's coming in. Maybe it's a software business that has subscribers on it that are signed up, and or maybe it's Netflix for an example. And every month they're getting that recurring $9 from every user. Or it's contracted revenue, right? So the revenue that they're going to generate in the future is on contract. So this is super low risk revenue. It's incredibly stable. Whereas company B, maybe it's a retail store, maybe it's a coffee shop, and like people are just coming in and coming out, and you don't know if they're going to come back next month. You have no idea. That the revenue is kind of stable, but not extremely stable. So it's just general revenue. So this company B is a higher risk source of revenue versus company A. So someone's going to pay a little bit more for company A because those revenues are stable and consistent. Now, what about trends? So if we look at revenue trends and earnings trends over the course of a few years, look, this company A, up the last 4 years. So every year those, the revenues and the earnings are going up in the company. Company B, it's going down, 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 down. So that $250,000 in our previous example, likely with company B, it's going to be lower next year. And with company A, it's going to be higher. So buyers, of course, are going to be willing to pay more for that stable revenue. It's lower risk because it's on the rise. Whereas company B, it's higher risk because it's on the decline. What about staff? Staff are the ones that generate our revenue at the end of the day. They're doing the work within the company. They're producing the product, right? So if we have low turnover in our staff, that shows lower risk, right? The risk of a key member leaving is much lower. Whereas company B over here has high turnover with their staff. So that means that company is going to be higher risk. Again, higher risk, they're going to want to have a higher return, which is going to lower the value of our company. So company A, lower risk, all right? they're going to be looking for a lower return, which is going to be giving us a higher value of our company. We're going to get paid more at the end of the day. And lastly, this NPS stands for Net Promoter Score. The Net Promoter Score is a measurement of how satisfied your customers are with your business, right? So if company A has super high satisfaction with their customers, that means customers are going to return. It means they're going to refer other people to go and use that product or service in that business. So it's going to give us more stability and a lower risk business that our revenues are going to deteriorate over time. They're actually likely to increase over time. Whereas company B, they don't have a high Net Promoter Score, means that people are probably not going to be coming back and using their business again. So that means that it's going to be higher risk that those revenues are going to disappear. So that gives you a high understanding of the money element of a small business transaction, because our buyers care about three things, right? They care about their time, they care about their money, and they care about their status. So we just learned how exactly they are going to look at your company from a money perspective. All right, hope this episode was useful. If you found it useful, then don't forget, like, subscribe, and the next video coming out on Thursday is all about status. See you guys there.